Okay, let's begin. Continue. Slicha. Hilchais Bayrer. So we finished talking about peels in the previous year, and we ended with the fascinating kasha of Rav Shlomo Zalman. And we reiterate, as much as it is a fascinating question, of Lamaisa is the Psak Halacha, like he said. Now, one footnote that we have to point out, a very important footnote, is on page Samach Vav over here, middle of Sif Lamed Hey. At the end, he has these little letters with a bunch of stars. So first star points out that klipat habeitza, the shell of an egg, since it's not raw even for an animal to eat it, mutter letaltala rak b'shasha mesira min habeitza. You only let him move it whilst you are removing it from the egg. But hesiras haklipa min habeitza, once you remove the shell from the egg, then harehi muksa. Then it is muksa. What does it mean it is muksa? That means it's muksa, which means that if you shell your eggs like everyone does and it's sitting on the table, it's a problem. If it's sitting on a napkin, then it's muksa on a napkin, pursuant to other rules. It's the highest level of muksa. It's muksa machas gufa. There's nothing you can do with it. But there will be simple heterim. Simple as heter is if it's going to be on a plate. If you're, let's say, just emptying the plate to use the plate, that might maybe the easiest thing is you put something else on the plate, which we're going to talk about shells in a moment. If you shell all your sunflower seeds and you have a mound of shells, how do you get rid of that? So it's a big problem. So the simplest eitzah is to have one devar heter on it, but there's also will be heter of graf shel rei. But lamais, you just have to know that it is muksa, which just adds to the list of reasons to deal with your eggs before Shabbos. Before Shabbos. Before Shabbos, and we move on to Sif Lamed Vav. Aser lahaitzi kitniyos. You're not allowed to remove kitniyos kigoyin afuna, which is a type of bean, oisha ashuit, which is another type of beans, an Israeli lunch delicacy in the schools. Shi'uit mitoich tarmilehen. Tarmilein is a Gavaldic word. If you look it up in a Hebrew dictionary, you know what tarmileim is? It's a knapsack. What's the knapsack of a bean? The pod. The pod. In his dictionary in the back, he tells you that. The pod that it comes from. So he says, you're not allowed to remove it from the pod on Shabbos. Now, this is something that, that we have to come back to. If you notice, there's a footnote here the size of almost the whole page. And we're not going to get involved in this right now. But he says there is an Isser Disha. Unless the pod is also edible. Tarmile afuna. Now, the most relevant question of this would be what? What would this be? What do people eat? That's one of these things. No. That's going to be a shell. He's talking about davka beans and their things. Anamamis. Anamamis would be. We just didn't know the name of it. What? People eat it. Yes, people actually eat it. People eat it. So it would sound like he just answered it. However, if you look at Ha'ara Kuf Dalid, he brings down different. Let's leave it on this side. We'll see if we have time. We have a bunch of examples today. Lamaisa and amamis are mutter. It could be the Isser would just to shell them. If you do it as you eat, it's going to be mutter. Disha is a malacha of Shabbos called dash. It's called threshing. So the big shell is when does threshing apply? On the field, the way you would thresh is you take the wheat and you remove the kernel from the wheat. That's mamish threshing. Which the chayr is this. There are svaras to say that it's a field malacha, that anytime you're doing it in your house, automatically it's going to be out of it. There's a Pri Megadim about this. Lots of read, as you see in this incredible footnote, which we don't have time to deal with at the moment. Let's get some examples. Lamed Zayin. Melon, when you're opening up a melon, let her move the seeds. The whole day today is just going to be applications, so we're going to move fast. Let her move the seeds. Because without this, you have like yellow ball, so you can't get to the flesh of the fruit. You could get it by cutting it open. Okay, that was some psalms are, but we are making hushi as a zeis samach l'sudasai. And again, we remind ourselves of all these things. Melon's a good example. Lamachas is a great example. Mutzlas is a klipa avish l'avtiach. The watermelon peel, afilu b'sakin, you let her move it even with a knife, which is important because often you cut up a watermelon, you have a massive watermelon, and you cut it in half, and half of it you serve. But once you're dealing with it, you just want to deal with the other half. We're seeing over here that is not Beseder, you're only allowed to remove the shells, the peels, and the pits of the part that you are moving. Lamed Tes. I don't know what that is. It was not in the back of here. As anyone could find it, that would be great. But he translated it as the the thin casing. The what? Mushroom. No. It's type of shell. Min hagvaniot, from the tomato. He's talking about either the stem of the tomato or the thin layer outside the tomato. Hajazifem, different fruits and things that have different types of shells and one not. No. The point where it's attached to the stem he's talking about. Because look at the bottom. If you look at Hara Kuftas, he says Shematim Shem Zalmin Shasi Lefakfik Shreinim Bezed Daimer like Klipa. Kiva Shapot Teret he davar b'fneiat. It's its own thing. Kamin Advuka Mamish Ke Klipa. Ve'im Kol Zed Daita Gamkin Lahater Hoyel Abtur Nekares b'fneiat Boy. Yishleim Doch Shivi Klal Me'urav V'lo Shaykh by Berum Bilvad Shli Yitzer Shapoteret Mehar Beberos V'Machas. So about plucking off the top, the little piece on the top. Vam Zois B'Tenai Shiasakein. We move on to Mem. Now, Mem is very important over here. Mem is lettuce. Lettuce in Mem says that if you have lettuce, now this is going to be for those that use the unchecked lettuce, the head of lettuce, as we would call it. Mutter lahasir es ha'alim achitzonim. So often you open up your head of lettuce and you notice that the outside guys are withered, spoiled, whatever you want to do. So the outside guys you're allowed to take off. So why? It's like a shell. To eat the inside ones. Of course. Let's say as you're going through it, you notice there are some spoiled ones. So this is a big deal. Or you already separated all of them, and as now you're going to go cut it up, you notice, there's a few spoiled leaves. So without even thinking, what do? You pluck out the spoiled leaves and you throw them out. Osir liver es alalu. You're not allowed to do that. Ella. Because it's no longer a shell, you can't take bad from good. This is a very important example. Now, often it comes out is as you're cutting it, you have a lettuce leaf, you notice the top part is a little bit whatever, so you're going to be cutting it off, so then cut off the little bit better, yeah? Beautiful. Then you can cut off a little bit better than the, cut off a little bit of the good together with the bad. I didn't translate it? Yeah, good. That's a very good question. Chavi, that's a very good question. How much is a little bit? The answer is a little bit. This is a machlek is really Chazon Ish versus Mishnah Berurah. We spoke about when the fly was in the soup. The Chazon Ish said, don't just take out the fly by itself, because that little bit of soup that's stuck to the wing, that's not called good with bad. So he said, you take out a spoonful. So if I'm cutting off a lettuce leaf, if there's a piece, so I just cut off a little bit more than it. So now it's good together with bad. I agree with you if you're like, you mamish, take off this teeniest little bit, that's nothing in a chanami, but you don't have to do what people's like, it's a little spoiled. Cut off the whole leaf like that. That l'chayra is, what's that going to be called? Baltashkas. Thank you. Who? Me'ufashim, spoiled. Which word? Chasaz lettuce. Hafratu is separate. Ay is or. We're good? Okay. But Umuta v'sarich livdog talei chasa. Now he gets to the next step. What about checking them? You're checking im in charakim lemineim. You're checking if there's bugs. Charakim are bugs. They're also diseases. They're bugs. If you find a big bug, mutter lasira. You let her remove it. Why? Now, I don't really know. We have to be careful with the mitzias over here. We have to be careful. Chavra, the mitzias he's about to talk about in lettuce, I don't know if this really exists. He's talking about big bugs on lettuce. It's not an Isser Breira. And as the Hara says, because it's Oimid Bifnei Atzmai. Again, I don't know what. He's saying, it's its own like big creepy crawler. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. But now look what he says, Weiter. V'toiv yaseh, your cockroach, exactly. You have a tarantula on your lettuce? I don't know what he's talking about. V'toiv yaseh, im yasir oisay yachad im ksas minola. It's better always to remove a little bit of the lettuce. V'lo yitral to los of that's what you don't want to pick up, daddy long leg, by yourself. Avol, this I think is what's more normal. Charakim kitanim. Small bugs had devukim, which are connected and stuck baleachasa on the lettuce. Also lasiram levadam. Why? Ki yesh basar mishem is a brera. Says a brera, take them off. V'chayavim lahasiram yachlim ksas min ol. You can't just remove that guy. Now, what's the $1 million question? Can I just wash it? So he continues and he says, I apologize in advance. Va'asar lishtoif. It's forbidden to rinse. Oy lahashrois, or to soak. Aleach hasal chodayim b'toch meisabon. Underneath soapy water chayetz by kedei lasimus hacharakim. Ki, why? Hacharakim chayim, they're alive. Yamoisu biyayim ela, you're killing them in these waters. Kufta Vav on the bottom says, Isser netilas l'Shabbos. Now here the question is, what is the eitzah? So first of all, the eitzah is to wash it before Shabbos. Good. Thank you, Rabbi. But I didn't. Now what? So we're going to differentiate. We're going to do levels. I don't know if I'm going to cover all cases because I don't know the mitzvahs well enough. On the lettuce that you buy, it's chatzi pre-checked. It's pre-checked, but they tell you need to wash it anyways. Now, there's two types. They used to say that you wash it from the sand. That was true. But there's lamaisa bugs there also. There are bugs there also. However, those lettuces, they say, are not muchsuk. And even if there are bugs, those bugs are not alive. So those lettuces you'd be allowed to wash, just don't soak them, wash well underwater. But what if you're buying just a good old-fashioned head of lettuce? That l'chayr, number one, is muchsik, and number two, they're alive. So I don't know what to do there. Someone here said, right, again, it's a nice idea. I haven't seen this inside, so I'm just going to repeat it. It sounds nice, is that if you first check it, and you don't see a bug, then you can wash it, because now l'chayr is not muchsik. Now, it could be there's still a bug there. You don't see a teeny little dead guy floating inside, but it's not muchsik, so then l'chayr you can take care of it. There are those that want to taina kineged Rosh Hashanah that even if you wash it off, who says you kill it? The bug just flies off, it goes down the sink, it goes for a nice swim, and then somewhere down the pipes down there, eventually it waterboards itself to death. I don't know. It's a little bit hard to understand. I mean, just imagine, little bug, stream of water. Sort of like us going under Niagara. It doesn't really work out so well. So I don't know. But that's l'chayr. So again, if one wants to wash it on Shabbos, the eitzah is for sure at that level to use the semi-pre-checked. If someone wants to check them, and then that, I definitely hear a svara lahatir. I just don't know. I don't know the particulars well enough to comment. But what's very important that we just saw is that to spoil the leaves, and or if you find a bug, you don't remove them by themselves. And we conclude with Mem Aleph. He says, Mutter lahasir es hakinimot. The kinimot, I'll tell you what that is in a moment. Just look at the case. Shalgabi klipat pri. They're on the shell, they're on the peel of a fruit. So what's that? These are scale insects. I don't think these things really exist in our society, but I don't know where you're getting your fruit from. Maybe real organic, farm-grown produce. Maybe you have these little insects. So he says you're allowed to remove them. Hadar oilusha orvu lefri atzmai. Bedina lini zekedin charak gadol. Again, I don't know what this is, but he says it's like a big bug. It's sitting there by itself, and you see this little ant crawling on your food. Yummy. But it's always better. And finally, Membeis, and this really ends this shlav, because from here further after Membeis, he's going to talk about man-made shells. But in Membeis, he says, what about cracking nuts? Mutter liftach agoizim. You're allowed to crack nuts. Afilu b'kliyam yuchel lekach maftach agoizim. A nut cracker. You're allowed to even use a hammer. Even if it was not set aside, you're allowed to use the hammer. Why? The footnote says the klisham la'achal iser, and therefore you're allowed to move it sarkufa sarkufa. And this is the quintessential sarkufa. No one in the world has ever done it, aside for in your third grade halacha b. But you would be allowed to use your hammer to crack. He parenthetically points out if you have a kli heter, now is not the time to profess your knowledge in Al Shabbos. Anytime you have a kli heter, the Mishnah Berurah holds you're supposed to lechatchila use the kli heter before you go use the kli iser. Aval, what are you not allowed to use? You cannot use a stone unless you designate it by the shemesh ra'ifin kavua, because the stone is the highest level of muksa, therefore you're not allowed to use it for any purpose. After you crack open the nut, sometimes there's a little shell on top of the nut. That is allowed to remove. You have to do it before you eat. And as well, it is allowed. But don't blow. This is a good one. You wouldn't think this. I know what gozi adama are. In my mind, I'm thinking peanuts. peanuts have that little like shell outside them. So sometimes after they're like on the plate, you'll have that little shell, and it's such an easy thing. Just give a blow, and all that little shell thing will go off. You think like, how could that be ulcer? That's mamish bayrer, because you're moving the bad from the good. Even though you're doing it with your mouth, that's not a heter in bayrer. Pitach es aklipas egois lachalakim rabim halalim rabim b'chalke egois. Now, what happens if everything gets mushed together? You have the shells with the nuts. Al yiveras aklipas. Again, something that during the week, let's say you finished, cracking all the different nuts, and you have one shell in there, you just pluck out the shell. Cannot do that. Al yiver davkas chalke egoisim v'yinich as a klipais. You have to remove the shells and leave the nut and leave the shell. The shells are muksa, they're not ready to behema, and therefore you are not allowed to move them. What do we say? We said the eitzah is to leave one nut on the plate with the shells and to clean it off. The other eitzah is, which by the way, just look at the bottom, look at our Kochavav. It's nice to see these things. The Miskaris HaShulchan and the Kids Shulchan Aruch writes, B'Shem the Siddur Harav, to V'nesha Kasha Lizar B'Chozel, L'chei Toiv Limanim Lachal HaGoyzim B'Shabbos Elkin Kilvam Ever Shabbos. Wild, definitely not the Minhag Eretz Yisrael. And what should I tell you? That is shells, that is lettuce, that is beans. One thing we did not talk about, which we'll start with tomorrow, is we'll discuss that footnote about Edda Mamis.